Welcome, everyone. So now let us look at lecture 5 on data wrangling, okay? So let us open our R. When you open your R for the first time, in some cases you are going to, so okay, let's say, remind me later, we didn't update anything. So you can see that at the environment, I have some previous information over there in the environment. I can just clear the environment to make it empty. And then at this console where whenever you run a code at the source, it's been executed at the console. So I can use Control L to clear the console. So now every place is empty. And then usually you can actually create a new R script by going to File, New File, and then R script. So new R script open. Now what we are going to do is we are going to actually make use of I've made the code available, the chapter 5 code available, which if you go to your R course, you can find it. So we are going to use the chapter 5 codes, okay? And what you are going to do is now we are going to start with selecting data, which is part of data wrangling, okay? How are you able to select data from a particular given data set? So what I will ask you is copy from all the way down here to, right here, and then copy and paste it, okay? Or you can, usually for your learning process, you can actually be copying it one after the other and be trying and make sure everything works and whilst you practice along. But in the meantime, first of all, what we actually want to do is to be able to set our working directory. So let me copy this in addition. I mean, you don't have to, but I just want to copy just to, okay. So first of all, whenever you want to import a data set, one way is to set your working directory, right? Now to set your working directory, first of all, you have to know where is the data located. So in order to know where the data is located, for me, my data is located, I have a folder called the dataset folder. And that is where the data is located. And the data we are going to use is called iris data, which I've made it available to you guys. You can always download it from Canvas, but you right click on the iris data and then you go to properties. Now under properties, you look at location and then you can actually copy the path. Okay. Now you come to your directory and then replace it in the working directory function. So you place it, you replace what you copied here, okay? So now, so remember this right here, this function which is set WD, now is what is called the set working directory, okay? So, and then you would have to copy and paste your path into this, into two inverted commas, okay? Okay, so that's what I just did over here. And in most cases, depending on the type of computer you are using, it's either R is going to accept backslash or forward slash. Now, in the case of Windows, I know Windows usually accept the forward slash. So what then it means is that you have to change all the backslash to forward slash, okay? All right, so let's change all of them to forward slash. So what is this working directory going to do? Once you run this code, R will now be able to identify this folder, which is the dataset folder. So then you can now run a second line of code, which will be able to read a data from this folder. And any data at all in this folder, as long as you run that second line of code, it can read that data, okay? So first of all, let us run our working directory. You can put a cursor and just run it, okay? So now our working directory is ready, okay? So what we are going to do is we are going to create we are going to name a data called iris underscore data. You can give it any name you want. And then we are going to assign it. So we are assigning the iris data we are going to import from our data set folder. We are assigning it to iris underscore data, okay? And then we are going to use the read.csv function, okay? So we are using the read.csv function, and then in an inverted commas, we are going to put in what? iris.data, iris.csv, okay? Now, what we are going to, so there's the iris data, and this the iris data here is an CSV file data, which is comma separated values file, okay? So all what we have to do is to type iris.csv, okay? So now what we are doing here is we say, okay, iris, we are naming it iris underscore data, okay? And then that's the new data the data we are coming to import, and we say read.csv, okay? Then we bring inverted commas, then we say iris. Now, in your folder, you have it as what? Iris. But then you have to add .csv for how to be able to identify that data, okay? And then next, we are saying that header, because the data have header, okay? Header equal what? Now, usually, as soon as you start typing the function, I'll give it to you so you can just hit enter and have it. So equal true. Okay. All right. So now once you run this line of code, that is what is actually going to be able to read the iris data in the dataset folder. Okay, so let me delete it and just go ahead and run it. So now I can go ahead and run this line of the code. So once I have run it now, the iris data have been loaded, okay? Have been loaded and it's ready for use. So how do we know it's ready for use? We can actually say that, okay, we can use the name function to know the names of the columns of the data set, okay? So name in a parenthesis, we say iris data, right? We put in the iris data, and so let's run it. So these are the columns we have in the iris data. Okay, so these are the columns we have in the iris data. And then we can also be able to print out the first 6 observation of the data set, okay? So by using head of iris underscore data, okay? And that gives the first 6 observation of the data set, okay? So here's what we have. So we have the sepal length, the sepal weight, petal length, petal weight, and then the species. Okay. So now you can also use a code, what is called the view, okay? View function, view what? Iris underscore. So I'll give it, I enter it. I can run this line of the code. And once I run it, okay. Once I run it, I'll display the table in the form of this, allow me to view the table, the data in the form of table, okay, in R. So this is how you can easily view the data. Okay, let's go back to our code. So now let us look at how we can actually perform some kind of data manipulation to be able to select some data from this particular iris data, okay? Now we've already done some data manipulation in the past, but now we are now going to be able to apply it on in selecting some data set from any given, data frame, okay? Now remember this R underscore iris is actually a data frame. So given that it's a data frame, we are able to, if we want to say select the first 3 rows of the data set, okay? So the first 3 rows of the data set, we can use what is called a square bracket. So we are going to select some data using a square bracket. Now, when you use the square bracket, R is able to read it like in the form of matrix, where the first, we have the row and comma. The next one is the what? The column. So if I have one iris in a square bracket, 1:3, then comma, then I'm telling how to actually read the first three observation of the data, the first three observation, or in other words, the rows of the data set. Then comma, then give me all the what? For all the columns, okay? So since after the comma, there is no information, now I'm telling R to read all the columns of this particular data. So give me the first three rows or observation for all the columns. So now I can go ahead and run. Okay, so here we have. So there's a first three observation, but it is for all the what? All the columns. Now, what you should know is that you can always assign this to a new variable, right? Or maybe a new item, which you might call it. So maybe someone else can decide to, okay, say that, okay, so I would want you to assign this one to, let's say, iris new, okay? So iris underscore, let's say new, okay? Then you bring the less than, the minus sign, which is the assignment sign, and then I can run it, okay? So now what then it means is that now for me to be able to observe this data set, I've been able to successfully run it, but for me to observe this data set, which has the first three rows and then all the columns of the iris data, I now have to go ahead and then print out this, which is iris underscore new. So I can just go ahead and type, so iris underscore new, okay? And then I can put the cursor on it and then run it. So now I run it and it gives me this, okay? Yeah, so whatever we are doing here, you can actually assign it and then use it as a means of creating a new data frame. Okay, so now let's move on. So the next one over here, we want to go into the iris data and then select only the second column of that data, okay? So to select only the column of that data, in the square bracket, we leave the first side of the square bracket, which is the row side, we leave it empty, and then comma, we put 2, which means we are selecting all the rows, but for the what? For the second column, okay? So in this case, it is going to select all rows for the second column of the data. So, okay, so now we can go ahead and run it. So this gives us all the information or all the observation for the second column of the data, okay? Now next, we can actually say, okay, iris data in a square bracket, give me the first 3 rows and then give me the column from column 2 to column 4, right? So in this case, I can go ahead and then run it. And now here we have the first 3 rows and then from column 2 to column 4. Now remember, initially these are the columns we have. So column 2 to column 4 is going to start from what? It's going to start from separ width all the way to so separ width all the way to separ petal width. Okay, and that's what we have here. So next we can also say that, okay, now rather than using values or numbers in calling the column or the rows, we can actually use the names, okay? We can actually use the names. So now so let's assume I would want to actually call the column species, okay? But then I only need the setosa category of the species. Now the species represent categories, okay? There are several species we can actually run and see. So let us say iris width. So let's run the species. and then let's run it and see. So we have the setosa, the vesicola, and then also the virginica, right? So those are the species. But then I want R to give me only the setosa species, okay? So I can use the square bracket again. So the data, the square bracket, and then now I'm telling R that, okay, go into the data. Now I'm using the $sign to call the species, okay? So go into the data. Once you put in the data name with a $sign, species, now you are only specifying you need only the data for the species. But not only you need the data for the species, you only need the species for setosa, okay? So now we can go ahead and run it. So we use the double equal sign to actually tell out that this one tell you a strictly equal, okay? Go to the species and give me only the data for setosa. So let's run that line of code. Okay, so there we have. So you can see all the data we have here is what? Is for setosa. So assuming you want to perform an analysis of a specific group, which is, let's say, only on setosa, then perhaps maybe we could have easily said that, okay, create a new data, which we can call it iris. Maybe we could have called it iris underscore setosa. Okay, and then say, and now we can run it. And then now we are telling R is creating a new data frame called the iris for only setosa, right? So now we can go ahead and run iris. Now it's called setosa, okay? So we run it, now it gives us, okay? So you can actually create a new data from another data frame and then use it in performing your analysis, okay? Now, what if I want to give me all the species, okay? I need all the species. So I want R to go into the data frame and then give me all the column for the species, okay? So now remember I told you that in the square bracket, just before you put comma, every information you put there is the row. And after the comma, every information represents the column, okay? So if I want only the species, I will tell R, okay, give me only the species. So now we can go ahead and run it. Now we have all the data for the species, okay? Now another person could have equally said that instead of putting the name, you could have just say iris underscore data with the square brackets, comma, I need all the rows. Okay, once you leave that side empty, it means you need all the rows, but then give me the species represent what column. So now you can see we have the sepal length, the sepal width, second column. The species represent the fifth column. So I could have just put there 5, okay? So which means I'm telling R, in the iris data, give me all the rows for the species, okay? For the column 5, which is the species. Now I run it and it could have equally given me. So I can either use the name of the column or use the value of the column, and then I could get it. Okay, next, how about if you can use the concatenate to select more than one column, okay? To select more than one column from your data set, okay? So again, I have iris with a square bracket, column, comma, means now I need all the rows, but give me all the rows for sepal, petal length, and then the species, okay? Now remember, we have the sepal, the petal length is here, which is representing the what? The third column, and then the species is representing the fifth column, okay? But then we can do that using the concatenate function, and then with comma separating the two different columns, okay? So now we can run that line of code. So now you can see that we are only getting the output for what? For the petal length and then species. Now, in the same way I did earlier, I could have just said that, okay, the iris data with the square bracket and then comma, and then I would have used again with the concatenate function, and then I can use give me the third column, comma, and the fifth column. So now I'm telling R, okay, I need all the rows of the data set for only the third and fifth column, which is representing again the petal length and then the species. So I will go ahead and run it. So now I run it. You can see again, it is giving me the same thing as, okay, let's go ahead and run this line. Okay. Now, once you have run it again, it is giving us the petal length and then the species, okay? So now you can choose to use the name of the columns or the values of the columns. Now, how about if I just need separ length, okay? Separ width, only the column for separ width, okay? Now, for only the column for separ width, I could have just another way to do it, rather than maybe just type in, let's look at the names. So names of iris data. Okay. Okay, so now separ weight represent the second column, okay? Now, rather than typing iris underscore data with a square bracket, comma, of 2, which is the second column, which is the separ weight, which I can run it and then you see. So this gives us all the data or the rules for the separ weight column. You could have just go ahead and then instead use the $sign. Now you say that iris, then you bring the $sign. Now, once you bring the $sign, I'll pull up all the columns in the data set, and then you can just select separ weight, and then you run that line. It gives you the same thing. So you can use this or that, okay, to select a particular column of the data set only. But either way, again, you can assign it to, you can assign it a new data frame, giving it a new name, and then you can use it for your further analysis. Okay. Now, how about if you actually want to, let us look at using the subset function. Okay, let us look at using the subset function. Now, if you want to use the subset function, we are going to use the data which is called the hints data for this particular subsetting, okay? Now, we can go ahead now. Remember that we already create our working directories, okay? So we can basically just go ahead and then say that, and then the data set name is what? Hints data. So we just have to type in our, so we create a new data, we say that hints data, you can give it any name you want, but it should be an appropriate name. Read.csv. Now in the inverted commas, we say that hints data.csv. Now, if you don't bring .csv, I wouldn't be able to read this data from the data set folder, okay? So .csv. Now we are able to load the hints data, okay? So now the hints data is ready, okay? You can equally say that, okay, give me the names of the hints data. Okay, so hints data. Okay, so now we can run it, and there's all the names. We have about 17 columns for this particular data set. Okay, now instead of using the working directory, reading through the working directory, usually what I prefer, which I use it quite often, is it's using this particular function, which is the same thing, but then it's in this case, it go ahead and then open up your a folder, okay? It opens a folder or an icon pop up on your system in which you can go ahead and search for where the data is, okay? So I will tell you in a second. So let us name this particular data. Let us call it hence data 1, okay? Okay. So now using this particular function, read.csv, and then in it choose.file header equal t, okay? Now, once you run it, it's now open up a directory on your PC, okay? Now, in most cases, it may not necessarily go straight to where your data is located. It could have just maybe come to your document, or maybe your system, right? Anywhere in your system, and you would have to now look for that particular data and then select the data, okay? So for instance, I'm looking for the data from my system, okay? So here's where it's located. Now there's the hints data. I can now select it. So now once I have selected, it means it is ready, okay? So I can equally say that, okay, give me the names of the hints data 1, okay? And that's this one, and I'll run it. And it's giving me, okay? So it's still the same data. So these two different ways of trying to load the data or import the data into R for use, okay? Either you set up the working directory or you actually use this function, the choose file function, to be able to just go ahead and find the data in wherever it is found on your system, and then start using it. Okay, so let's proceed. So now we are going to use what is called the subset function, okay? So the subset function allow you to be able to select some number of some either columns or rows from the data set, okay? All right, so let us give it the data we are actually coming to select from the hints data. Let us give it a name, hints data underscore subset 1, okay? And then we are using the subset function. So if you can see that once you actually start typing subset, let's copy, you can copy this here. Once you start typing subset, it will pop up, okay? So the question now becomes subset what? First of all, you have to put in the data you are actually going to subset from, okay? Which is the hints, okay? You are going to select that from the hints data, then you bring comma. Then what are you actually going to select from? Now we are going to select ages that are less than 30 years, okay? So we select age that are less than 30 years. And then we are also going to select for only columns that are named age and gender. So we are selecting all ages less than 30 years for only columns named less than for only columns, for the columns of age and gender, okay? So we can delete this one. Now we can go ahead and run this line of the code. Okay. So now we can actually look for it. So we can say names. We can just use the names function of our new hints subset 1, okay? And it will give us the name. Okay, so we only have age and gender, right? But then we can also decide to use, you can use the length function to know how many observation do you have in the data, okay? So the subset data, how many observation do we have in the data? So how many columns? So we have the number of columns in the data is what, 2 columns, okay? But then the number of rows, which is n row, we can use n row of hints, okay? And then run it. So we have 409 observation or rows in the data, okay? And then of course we can ask R to, we want to view this particular data, okay? Which is hints underscore subset, okay? Let's view it. Once we apply the view, R show us the data. So there is the what? The data, which is a data frame showing us only age and what? Gender for the subset we actually carried out, okay? Let's go back to our R code. Okay, so there's how you can actually use the subset to select any columns, any type of data, okay? Now, you can use what is called the dplyr package from tidyverse, okay? So first of all, if you haven't installed the tidyverse, you have to be able to first of all install the tidyverse, which I have already installed. You use the install.packages function to install the tidyverse. And then now once you are done, you have to load the package or activate the package. So let me load it. Okay, I've loaded the package, which means the package is now ready for use. Now, we are actually going to be able to, from this package, we are able to create a new data frame, which we are going to call it hints underscore subset 2. Okay, so there's another way to actually subset from a data. Now we are going to subset from the hints data. And how can it read from the data? We are going to use the percentage sign greater than and percentage sign. This right here will go into our data set to read the selection of the columns we actually want to perform. Okay, so now what we are saying is go into this data set and select as the column for what? Age and gender. Okay, let's run it. So now it is ready. So we can just use the names of what? Hints, the hints 2, which was the hint subset 2. We can run it, and now there's what we have, right? Age and gender. Okay. Now, in the same way, we can also, rather than actually using the name of the column itself, which is a character names, which means you have to put inverted commas or maybe quotations, you can just use the value of the column, okay? Which is, in this case, we are going to actually use it to select a subset of a data, which we are naming that new data, hence subset 3, okay? And then we say, okay, go into our hence data, again, using this percentage greater than percentage sign, which means it's able to go into the data and select the column 2 and 4, okay? So let's run it. Now it's ready. So we can go ahead and then just say, give us the names. Okay, we just want to observe the names for this particular hints. So, which is the third data, the subset 3. So it gives us, and that is representing what? Patient ID and then health insurance, okay? Now, if you look at it previously, when we look at, so this was the entire hints data. And in the entire hints data, you can see the patient ID represent the second column, and then health insurance represent what? The fourth column. And that's exactly what we use this function to do, to be able to go into the data and select the column 2 and column 3, which you can actually, so in a situation where you have a big, huge data set in which you don't need all the columns for your analysis, but you would want to select a specific column, you can actually create a new data set by using this function to actually select from those variables you actually needed for your further analysis, okay? And that's using the dplyr package, okay? Now, next, we can also look at what if we actually want to eliminate some columns. So rather than selecting some columns, we would want to exclude certain columns, okay? So in order to exclude certain columns, so let's assume you would want to exclude column 1 to 3. So in this case, again, the name of the new data set, which we are naming it hints data subset 4, go into the hints, our hints data, again, use this particular percentage greater than percentage sign to be able to go into the data and eliminate column 1 to 3, okay? So let's run it. So now we have run it. So now let us look at names of this particular new data, which is new hints data, which is a subset 4. So hints, so subset 4, let's select it. So let's run it and let's look at the names. Okay, so here we have it. So you can see that now it doesn't include the names of column 1 to column 3. Now, the way in which we can actually, let's look at the names of the original data set, which is the hints data. Okay, there's the original data. Let's look at the names. So the original data has what? Has column 1 as HHID, column 2 as person ID, and column 3 as what? Quality care. So now in this over here, what we told R is, okay, we use the concatenate function in the select function. Okay, so we use -C of what? 1:3 means, okay, now we are excluding from column 1 to column 3, okay? And in that select function, and that actually excluded those columns. So now you can actually see we are actually having from health insurance, which shows from column 4 going, okay? And this is how you can actually also use, you can exclude some column from a particular data set and leave the remaining data for your further analysis, okay? Then also, furthermore, we can also say that, okay, what I want you to do is for you to go into that data set and filter out. Now, this time we are going to use what is called the filter function, which is again going to do some subsetting, okay? Filter out all ages greater than 25, and then also for gender equals to 1. So in other words, I need only the data for all ages. So assuming you are performing an analysis, you want to focus on a particular age group, okay? And then also, let's say you are only focusing on a particular gender. Let's say maybe male, okay? 1 is representing male. So now you are using the filter function where you are telling that, okay, give me only the data for those 25 years and above, and only give me the gender for what? Male, okay? Now let us name that particular data as hence data subset 5, okay? And let's run it. Okay, so now it's ready. So let's again, we can actually look at the head of the data. Okay, so let us head of what? Hence 5, okay? And then let us run it. Okay, so now what do you see? We have only, we have for gender, okay? We have gender is representing only 111, right? And of course, age is also going to be, the age is also going to be greater than 25 years and above. And you actually can decide to be able to, where is age? So here is age. You can just maybe just, what you can do is just use the summary function to summarize your hints 5 data, okay? So you would want to perform just a statistical summary of all the columns for the hints data subset 5, okay? So here is what we have. Now let us look at age. I did this for us to just look at the age. Age, the minimum age is what? 26, and the maximum age is what? 104. And the reason is we created the data in which we told R that we needed the age to be greater than 25 years, right? And then we are only selecting only the data for what? Gender equal 1. So you can also decide to view the data, view hence the subset 5. Let's view that data. Okay, so we can view the data and we can look at gender. So you can see on gender, we are only looking at what? Everything represent 1, 1, 1, 1. It means that it's only selected male data, right? Gender equals to 1. Okay, so there is it for selecting a data set from any given, either selecting or subsetting a data set from any given big data or maybe any given data frame. So that's it, and I will see you in the next lecture where we'll talk more on data wrangling. All right, see you.